Welcome back, Badgers. You find myself and the number one Badger, Sam Cooper, live from the Royal Liverpool boot room, which is our locker room. We were looking for a quiet space to record away from kids and dogs and machinery, and we find ourselves here where it's quite a good temperature. Sam, would you agree?
It's a bit on the warm side.
It is very warm. It's full of stinking boots, wellies, radios, and a plethora of Man United fridge magnets,
which we're trying not to look
at. So yeah, we're going to take a different spin on this week's podcast. Where on the first podcast, Sam was nice enough to interview myself about my journey to here and beyond, and we're going to flip it around this week and talk about Sam's fantastic achievement that he's just finished playing. How many links courses in England and Wales, Scotland?
225.
225.
Which
so
I hope is all of them.
Which you finished last week, and yeah, I think it's time that we kind of done a deeper dive into that and asked. I've got a load of more interesting questions. So we're gonna pile on into that, but the news from Royal Liverpool this week. It's been a week of mixed weather. We've never had 2 dry days in a row, and we're having the driest summer in history. We're certainly getting the rain back now. Cracking on, revetting bunkers, roads going in still, and we've been piling the sand on this week. We've top dressed. Greens have had 17 tons a hectare of sand in the fairways. Surrounds had 30, and we've almost got finished. I just finished probably an hour ago, dragging in one of the last fairways for just now. But the plan is just to keep piling sand on all the way through the winter and firming up these surfaces. And
sons and mere sons.
Exactly. That's the best Scottish accent I've ever heard. But yeah, everything's doing well. We've loads of growth, and we've just started to feel the first of the cold weather coming in this week.
Yeah, it's been cold, hasn't it?
But there's still loads of people out playing and enjoying their golf. And one of the most amazing things I've noticed that we roped off the fairways, so people wouldn't be taking their buggies and their trolleys in the rough. And we've been playing off mats for a month now, and the recovery is astounding. You can hardly see a divot on the fairways.
Well, it has been warm, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Up until the start of this week, it's just been unseasonably warm. It feels like.
All the overseeding work's been fantastic and stuff. So
good. How many bunkers have you got left?
I think we're doing 50. We had which included 2 brand new ones, and I think we've got about 25 left.
Okay.
Which my deputy Paul promises me will be done before Christmas. But the guys they fly up with them. You know, they work hard and crack on. They're doing really, really well. But yeah. So this. Going back to yourself, last week I had a notification on my phone when I was dragging the 17th fairway that said Sam Cooper has gone live, or links from the road has gone live. So I tuned in and listened along, and it came about from Harriet. Is that right? Saying that you should do that from the van.
Yeah, I'm not really you might not believe it, seeing as you're listening to me on a podcast, but I'm not the greatest self-publicist in the world. I've done more than my fair share of social media stuff, but I don't really like going live or doing anything like that, which is something that I'm told you're meant to do if you spend a bit of time on Instagram. But Harriet persuaded me. It was going to be the last morning in the van before, as part of the tour. So we'll keep the van and we'll carry on for a bit longer doing other bits and pieces, and I've got some photography and stuff. But the last day playing a golf course, so I thought, fair enough, no more excuses. I should answer some questions. So I asked my followers on Instagram. Must have got about 100 questions through, which was much appreciated. So I answered a few of them, not all of them. Some of them weren't really appropriate for a Friday morning.
James Hornsby.
But yeah, it was good fun.
Excellent. Well, when I was, I asked a question. I think I asked what course did you lose the most amount of balls on?
Oh yeah.
Because I remember the first game I played with you when you came back, you were playing with absolute tatties. You were playing with Wilson Ultra AR-432s and stuff, and are about 30 years old, and
I'll tell
because
you
you'd
what,
lost all your balls.
I've stopped caring what ball I play with.
Yeah.
Like having played so much golf, like I don't think it makes any. Sorry, Titleist and TaylorMade and everyone else, but I don't think it makes that much. Not if you're playing in the wind.
Not if you're good. You're a ball striker with Sanus. The difference makes a big difference to me.
I did go through a period where I played same ball 8 days in a row, 8 rounds in a row. And then I thought I better retire it now. And the ball wasn't spherical anymore; it was slightly squished and completely battered to hell. But I didn't think it made much difference.
It's a good excuse for me. Every time I'm quite good at smiling balls now when I thin them out of bunkers. But I had a lot of thoughts about some of the other questions. I've written some down. And one of the first things, Harriet's been massively supportive with this whole thing. So briefly, take us through how it came about during lockdown and how much persuading did you need to do this,
So I'm not sure many people know this. Actually, in 2020, early 2020, we were planning on buying a hotel in Southport.
All right.
So Harriet and I used to do property stuff. So we used to develop things, and we had a bad experience that's still, like 2 years later, still ongoing with something that we were involved with, and it was it's been a stressful period of time still. But we were planning on sort of getting a few people together and opening a hotel for golfers in Southport, because there isn't really anything massively high quality that's tailored for the golfers in our part of the world, like there is in, say, East Lothian or Fife, or where it's just completely golfing mecca on and off the golf course. We get so many Americans and international visitors coming through that we did a load of research, and we were thinking of doing that. And God, I'm glad we didn't, because then COVID came, and that would have been complete disaster. So that sort of took the wind out of our sails, and it meant that we had no intention of doing anything property wise for a bit. So it's like, shit, what do we do we've got an unknown period of time, and we're sort of coming to the end of our projects and stuff that we were doing, and we basically just thought, well, we're a few years away maybe from having kids or that kind of stuff, and we're never going to have a period of time again in our, certainly when we're young enough to go and have a bit of fun and drive around and do something. Couldn't travel internationally, of course. So we actually stumbled on this, like a YouTube, when YouTube says, oh, you might be interested in this. Well, YouTube suggested that we might be interested in this couple in America who bought a van and converted it into a camper and drove around America. Okay. And I watched a few of their episodes, and I thought, yeah, you know what, we could do that.
Can you remember what they were called?
I'll put a link in the show notes. I think it was called something like We Are Us, or I don't know, some. It was really good though. They converted this Sprinter van, and that's really popular in America to do. Not just have a camper van or something, but actually to convert a Sprinter van was, in our case, a crafter van, which is the slightly posh version of the same thing, really. So we thought, well, it would be quite nice to take 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever, and travel around. And I thought, well, if we're going to do that, then I'm going to play golf. And if I'm going to play golf, then we may as well go around the coastline, and I'll play all the links golf courses. And, I just thought, yeah, that would be straightforward to do. And I hadn't quite realised how many there were, because I'd gone through the True Links book, which is a book that must be about 15 years old. It's good, but there's loads in there that are missing or not really properly categorized and stuff. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I may as well do it properly. So I did all the research I possibly could, and Twitter added a few more courses to the list, and that's how it started. And then I just built a list, and then we just said, bugger it, let's go and drive around, and we started in September 2020.
And where did you get the van from?
So we actually bought it from a guy in Bristol, and he'd started converting it. It was like it's a 3.5 ton crafter. So that's the biggest van that I can drive.
It's a beast
on my license without, you couldn't upgrade your license during COVID, obviously.
Does Harriet drive it?
Sometimes, right. Yeah.
The dogs drive it.
Everyone, Winnie, I think would crash it. But so we got it from this bloke in Bristol who'd started converting it, and then for whatever reason ran out of steam or couldn't be bothered anymore. So we got this half converted van, and we got it back up to our place in West Kirby where we were living at the time, and finished it off. And I'm 6'2" and pretty hefty, overly hefty.
Not anymore.
I'm trying. And I thought, well, I don't want to knacker my back, especially when playing golf and going around everywhere. So it'd be good to have a good, proper, comfortable bed and a few other luxuries relatively. So we got our joiners who'd been working on the project that we were finishing at the time and said, guys, can you do this? Can you do that? And they did. And they did a great job. So yeah, we sort of just took a van and converted this into the van we have now, and then took a couple more sort of refurbishments and things over the couple of years that we've had it to get it to where it is today. But it's great.
Mm-hmm. No, it's distinctive, especially the matte black color. Was that something that you did, or was it?
Yeah, that
like
was
that.
No.
Paintbrush job.
Well, it was just I managed to ding it when I was in. I think we were in Shetland, maybe, and I had a couple of. It was already slightly mismatched on color, and it just looked really tatty. And I said, I know what I'll do. I'll just get a vinyl matte black wrap and cover it. Some bits of it are really good.
Yeah,
some bits of it are pretty shit, but some bits of it are really good.
It's certainly it does look out of place in the Royal Liverpool car park.
I don't really park in the car.
It's a bit big. So I take it you hit the Wirral first, did you? Was that the first place to tick off?
Yeah. So
which you'll have done anyway.
When we decided to do it, whilst I was doing the conversion, I played a few local courses, and I also actually went down to Cornwall and Kent.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned in the Rob McGurk episode that with Joe McDonnell, who's a very good friend of mine from Hoylake, we were doing the maps. So we also did one of St Enodoc. So I went down there, I went down to Kent, and I did a few of the others, and they were sort of the very first courses that I did as part of the tour. And that must have been August 2020, like just before we went full time into the van for 3 months.
Mm-hmm. So was that the most? Well, it's a nightmare getting down to that part of the world, isn't it? Really, is that been the hardest part to get to? Really,
I wish. I think the hardest course. Yeah, I mean, driving a big ass van down the tiny roads of Cornwall is tricky. But
nothing on the Scottish Islands, I wouldn't imagine.
The Scottish Islands were, because you're dealing with like ferries that get cancelled, and like even recently we were en route to the Macquarie on Islay, and we were meant to be going to I think it's Port Askeig and Port Ellen are the two places. I might have got that wrong. And we were meant to be going to Port Ellen, which is just down the road from the Macquarie, and we were sailing past Jura because I could see Ardfin. I was looking wistfully over at Ardfin, and I was like, "This isn't right. We're meant to be over on the other side of the island." There hadn't been any announcements, but they just decided to take us to the other port on the island. So it's fine because we were in the van, but it's like 40 minutes as opposed to 10 minutes. So if you're on foot, But I mean, that's just typical of some of the ferries on the west coast. They just go where they want, not where they a timetable to go.
Oh God, that's outrageous. Yeah, pretty slapdash.
Yeah, but we made it everywhere, and it's a hell of an experience.
Did you make it to Ardfin then?
No, Ardfin's the only one that I haven't done, but because it's on peat and because it's sand capped on peat, so I don't think anyone would think it's a links course. But at some point, it'd be nice to play.
Well, yeah, it looks incredible. A lot of the guys who've been working here, Golf Link Evolve, who built that golf course, have just been kind of travelling back. So I've heard a lot about it.
Oh yeah.
So obviously you're working now with CDP, Clayton, DeVries and Pont. What's your exact role for that?
Bit of everything really. So officially, I guess I'm a design associate. and Clayton and Frank in particular are sort of training me up, and that's great because they have two different. We have a shared philosophy throughout everyone who works for CDP. I think really sees architecture in the same way. We love strategic golf, we love variety, and those kind of traditional. I say traditional. I mean like golden age sorts of philosophies. So we're all on the same page, but Frank's a bit more of a bit more technical with sort of how he'll go about routing a course. I think on the routing side, Frank's probably he must be one of the best, and his knowledge of Colt and Simpson and Fowler and some of those early is second to quite literally none. Clates, he's his knowledge of golf courses, his knowledge of holes is scary. And it's something that I think I'm reasonably strong on. But in April, Clayton and I went all over the country, and we must have played or walked at least 25 odd courses. And it's so much fun when you stood in the hole and say, oh, this is a bit like the 8-foot Royal Aberdeen, or this is a bit like the 4-foot Cruden Bay, or, well, it's not really like the 4-foot Cruden Bay. But his sort of his library that he has in his head of golf holes is just obscene, and his recall is amazing. So spending a lot of time with those guys has been brilliant. So then in my other, I do a bit of writing and stuff, and I enjoy writing. So working with them for the course plans that we're building, and then I'll do a lot of the writing and stuff, which I enjoy. So that's my sort of part in the business so far.
So was there a point on this trip over the last few years where you decided that you would like to pursue that career as an architect? And was there a defining moment that made you turn out to Harriet and say, do you know what, I think I'm learning so much about these golf courses and how golf should be played, in my opinion, and it's something that maybe when all this goes away, it was something I'd like to pursue. Was there a point or a defining moment?
Interesting. I don't know whether there was a defining point. It just kind of crept up on me, really. But even way before, like when I used to do the property stuff, I was on the green committee here, and I remember like when we were doing a few bits and pieces to the course, and Martin Ebert was involved. I would come down to every course walk, and it could be pitch black in the middle of the winter, blowing a gale, chucking it down, and I'd be really excited to come down because it was like, oh wow, this is what I really love. And I've always had that passion and that interest, and I must have read, well, certainly every book on architecture I could get my hands on over the last 10, 15 years anyway. So it's always been a passion. Then it's just sort of developed, and then it's something I don't really know how you'd ever plan to get into it. Like it must be one of the trickiest things to say, right, I'm going to be a golf course architect, and then it's like, okay, well, how do you actually do that? There's no real. It's not.
Well,
like
most people fall into it via being a good golfer, or potentially maybe joining a construction company and working as a shaper or a finisher. I think
shaping is like the conventional route. Now I think of Tom Doak has his Renaissance sort of program, and there's loads of people, really, really good architects who sort of come through that, and some of the shapers I know who worked with like Cole Crenshaw and people. So globally, I think that is the relatively established way, but in Britain there isn't so much of that. So I'm just incredibly fortunate, really, that as I spent more time getting to know some of the guys at CDP, and then they just said to me, Sam, is this something you'd be interested in doing? And I said, well, I'm not sure really. And then I went home later and I thought, why on earth did I say that? Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I want to do. So ever since then, that must have been a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years actually, relatively early on in the tour. And then over time, it then it sort of just grew, and to a point where at the beginning of this year, I started working with them properly as I was finishing off the tour.
And we can stick on this subject for a wee while, and then we can go back to the tour. But tell us about a couple of things I'd like to know. Do you think there's enough work for golf course architects in this country just now? And going forward, how do you see the future? Because I know there's a big fashion of restoring golf courses. Do you think that CDP will have a bash at maybe doing a brand new course, or is it going to be restoration? And what would your ideal your ideal client and golf course be? Few questions there to remember.
Well, interestingly, in Britain, I think it's slightly different. So we're fortunate at CDP that we're global. So we are doing new build stuff. Like we're building, or Clayton and Mike DeVries are building 7 Mile Beach at the moment. There's a couple of projects in Vietnam that Frank and Hendrik are working on and are going to be starting soon, and a few other bits and pieces.
Would you drive the van to Vietnam?
That would be an interesting route, wouldn't it?
It might take a bit more persuasion.
Yeah, Scotland was a slightly easier sell, funnily enough.
Yeah.
That is a core part of the business. Like, Clayton has built Barnbougle Dunes and with Tom Doak, and Mike DeVries has built Cape Wickham, and they're like 2 of the top 25, 30 golf courses in the world, depending which list you read. So new build stuff is very much sort of bread and butter for the business, and it's really different from doing course reports and refurbishment stuff. I think if you only do refurbishment stuff to generate enough work to pay for a big business is really hard, and you've got to. I think the danger is you can almost change stuff for the sake of changing things, because if you've got an engine to feed or whatever, then that can be challenging, and you've got to generate business. Otherwise, you can't go somewhere and just say, "Oh no, it's perfect as it is, mate," because that's not a business. And at the end of the day, it's still a business. So we're very fortunate that we're not as reliant on that side of things, and it gives us that ability to do things that if a hole doesn't need changing, a hole doesn't need changing. That said, I think that almost every golf course in Britain, certainly some of the great ones of an age, have or are in need of what I call proper refurbishment. There are 2 things that I think, or we think, you can do. If it's like if you bought a house, I use this analogy. If you bought a house down the side of the road here, there's some beautiful Victorian houses. So they were built late 1800s, and then someone built it, lived in it for 30 years, and then someone else comes along, and they might put a little extension on or refurbish it, and then 30 years later someone else comes along and then changes something else. The bathroom is in the little outrigger at the back, in the kitchen, because that was what the Victorians did, and they say no, we're gonna knock this through and put an extension in. And then in the 70s, 80s, whatever, someone might put a conservatory on, and then if you come along, Bledge, and say, right, okay, here's this house now, is the house as good as it can be? And it's like, well, for the context of 2022, for a modern life, or a family, whatever else, chances of that being right are almost non-existent. Like it's being changed bit part by different hands for 100 and something years, and at different times there have been different requirements of the people that have lived in the house. So I think there are 2 things that you can then do. You can refurbish it a bit and give it a, homes under the hammer. You can give it a bit of magnolia paint or a bit of elephant's breath on the wall, and a new bathroom and a new kitchen. You can make it look a bit nicer, or you can say, right, okay, let's get an architect in and work out what we need from the house, how it's going to work, and things might have changed, and that could be you knock down a few bits that have been added on, and you knock through a few walls, and you change it, and you get it back to brick, and thinking back to my sort of property days, you can do it properly, or you can do it cheaply, and I think that we are firmly in the get it right structurally, and that means the strategy of the holes, like the balance of the golf course. Make sure the course asks questions and the vegetation management and the drainage and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like, oh, it was better in the olden days, let's go back to what it was like. It's often the case, but that's only because in the golden age, I'm talking about the sort of 1920s and 30s, they had the architects who were working then had a really defined set of beliefs on how a golf course should function and who it should test, and variety and strategy and those principles. Yeah, they're slightly different now because we all hit the ball in a different way. It goes a different trajectory, goes further, whatever. But fundamentally, challenging a hazard and getting an upside from it and that sort of spirit of adventure, that's the same reason we play golf. Like, that's why golf's fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that every golf course has got trees grow, nature changes, things are being fiddled with, and it's no reflection on any individual golf course. It's just the same as the analogy, things change. There were 2,000 golf courses in this country, and there were so many that were built by a Colt or a Simpson or a Fowler, or a special architect. And if you had a portrait in your loft that was by Rembrandt or Renoir or whatever, and you hadn't realized, and you got it down now, then you'd think that should be in pride of place with a bit of TLC and looking as good as it can. And why is that any different from a golf course that was created by one of the grandmasters of architecture?
No, the game progresses, doesn't it? And people's demands change, and the demands of tournament golf, or
absolutely,
or whether it be your place in the game, and how you're going to push the club forward by making more money, etc. I mean, I've seen firsthand what a good architect can do. Changes at Royal Cinque Ports, for example,
absolutely.
And by investing in that architect, yeah, it costs money. And it costs money for the construction, but we flew up the rankings after that. We got more R&A tournaments, and we started to get talked about more in the world of golf. And as a result, the members, the more visitors come, subsidise quite a lot of the membership fees, so they're not absolutely rocketing, paying through the roof.
Yeah.
And it's money well spent in my book, having good architects.
I think it's an incredible false economy to neglect the architecture, because a lot of some people say, in fact, I had this discussion not so long ago, they said they don't care about architecture, it doesn't really mean anything to them. And I think that's fundamentally wrong, because if anyone's listening to this and thinks, yeah, I'm not really interested in architecture, well, I'd say if you played one golf hole and you played another golf hole, if you have a favorite of those two, then you like architecture.
Exactly,
you might not know why you like it. You might not be able to say, oh, this was better because of X, Y, Z. But as soon as someone thinks, oh, I prefer this course to this course, part of it can be the presentation, part of it can be the views, whatever. But for me, a big part of it is always going to be the architecture.
I completely agree. And I mean, well, last week's guest, Rob McGurk, perfect example of that again. Spending good money on an architect and taking your club forward. I always used to say to Sean that it would have been incredible if Princes, if they had 3 different architects for their 3 loops of 9. Could you imagine having Ebert on one, Coeur Crenshaw on one, Tom Doak on one, for example, and seeing how different they would have done it? It'd have been really cool. But I don't think Rob's pockets were that deep.
Well, we could have done it for
yes,
for a fraction of.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about some of the projects you're doing just now. Obviously, like next door at Wallasey,
yeah, really exciting.
The wonderful John McLaughlin is, and I've seen the plans. John's talked us through it, and like John's excitement levels about what you're planning to do there are through the roof. Maybe if you want to kind of talk a little bit of what you can talk about that.
Yeah, well, there's still a few little bits and pieces to be decided, and then of course go to membership. But one of the things that we are going to do is change the bunker style, because at Wallasey they're revetted, but they don't have a turf nursery. They spend a fortune on
bought in turf,
and bought in turf of a quality that is inferior to the stuff that they were previously doing it with. So when it's actually an exercise that John and I did together, and we went through time spent, the increased regularity they were doing it, and the increased costs of the turf. And he almost fell off his chair when he actually realized just how much it was costing every year for the bunkers just to look exactly the same as they did the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, it's like, well, there's two things you can do. Are you going to go for three? You either stay the same, and just accept the money. Are you going to go for an eco bunker or something like that? And the place I've been where it's worked really, really well. But at Wallasey, they've got such fabulous topography, and the scale of the sand dunes they have there. It's almost like the west coast of Ireland in places. Like it's mega stuff. So we thought, well, a natural bunker style there will just suit the site far better, and again differentiate it from Hoylake down the road. It's where it's flatter and it's polished, and it's always going to be a sort of revetted style.
Yeah, it kind of suits it.
So that's one thing. The other thing at Wallasey, and this is something that we're hopefully coming to the end of the project on, but it's the routing of Wallasey. So you can go into a golf course. Like we work at Blackwell as well. And you played Blackwell.
I can't remember playing Blackwell, Sam.
Well, you played Blackwell very much under the influence of much alcohol. But Blackwell is a Fowler and Simpson golf course, and those guys knew how to route a golf course.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And it's on like 90 odd acres. It's got 2 loops of 9 that return to the clubhouse, like really return to the clubhouse as well. I mean, you almost walk through the bar to get from the 9th green to the 10th tee, which is very much suits the club down to the ground. And you don't play consecutive pars until you get to the 15th there. You start off with a 4, and then it's a 3, and then it's a 4, and then it's a 5.
I didn't even notice that.
And then a 4, and then a 3.
That's amazing.
And then it's constantly changing, and the variety, it's tiny course yardage wise. It's only about 6,000 and a bit yards, but it never feels short because it's just so intelligent in how it's routed. So if we went, when Frank, because it predated CDP, but when Frank went there, you're not changing the routing. Like the routing is the strongest feature of the golf course. Yes, trees have grown, and yes, the bunkers look a bit like spaceships, and yeah, it needed a bit of the Simpson character brought back, and some of the Simpson flair and eccentricity in parts brought back. But the routing was never ever the issue.
Questioned, yeah.
Whereas at Wallasey, I would say that the routing is a bit of not a problem, but if anyone went in to design a golf course at Wallasey today, there is not a chance in hell they'd end up with the golf course that they have.
Yeah, they'd make more use of the dunes and
it's
take away the flat area.
It's an old golf course. The boundaries have changed so many times. Like they used to have an extra 100 acres beyond what's currently the 5th green, and they lost that during the Second World War. There was a big chunk of land that had 500,000 cubes of sand taken out to beef up the promenade down the road. There was a big bit right at the second that was open sand up until like the 1950s. So there's loads of things, and like you say, it was only really in the 19 teens, when they were able to start building greens on top of sand hills, whereas previously they'd always build them on the flat land at the bottom, because in summer they just die with the water going all the way through and not staying anywhere near the surface. So Wallasey is a product of its evolution, and a quirky evolution at that. But it has, as I say, some of the very best sandhills in the country. And the club also came to us and said, look, there's 2 things. Can you give us a improve hole by hole, a plan for that? And can you also look at, a slightly more ambitious plan to maybe make the most of some of the land that we have fewer holes on the flat land, which was formerly agricultural stuff, have less golf over there, more golf in the sandhills. So it was two different plans we were about to deliver to them. So it's really exciting, because I've been playing golf there since I was like 8-9 years old.
And what's progression for a club like that is progression for every club in the area, because if we can bring more people to the Wirral and have, that means it's great for Caldy Golf Club, it's great
Absolutely.
for Heswall Golf Club, because people might come and play all 4 and just stay on this side. every time a golf course nearby gets better, I always feel that it's great for everyone else. But I really hope something happens up there, and it'll be exciting if it does, and especially with John in charge. A
Yeah.
great man to take it through. I mean, there's not many greenkeepers with as much zest and that are as keen to progress an area as John is. He's been there for how long now? A year and a half, almost
A bit longer than that.
2 years.
But, yeah, over a couple of years.
And absolutely loves it. You get a great feeling from how much he really wants it to work. So we're praying it does. Really,
and he's done so much to the golf course already,
Mhm.
economically. And before, when I started talking about things that you'd immediately do when looking at a course plan, and the things that every golf course suffers from, generally speaking,
Mhm.
fairways get narrower, greens get smaller and more circular. The rough gets thicker, and the trees, if there are trees, will grow in. Those things are going to happen naturally. But John, when I was doing the sort of looking at the historical size of the greens and the modern size of the greens, they're actually not a million miles away, and that's because of John. If I'd done it, or if I looked at in fact, I should do that. If I looked at sort of 4 years ago, the areas from 4 years ago, they were 10-15% smaller, but John has
grabbed the bull by the horns and just pushed things out.
because
Yeah.
he loves architecture, he gets it, and he's
a fantastic golfer, and you'll see
absolutely
where there's, loads of green grabbing that can be done, where you can push greens out to get more pin positions, and we all know what more pin positions mean. It takes the pressure off a lot of the other areas of the green. But going back to the revetted bunker thing, I should have actually done my research before this and counted up how many staff hours we would have used so far on these 25 bunkers, rebuilding them, because it's unbelievable. And that doesn't count now. We still have a big hole in our turf nursery where we need to replace all this turf because we don't have time to seed it before they open, so we'll have to buy turf in to replace all that, because we need full coverage for all the infrastructure that's going in there.
And is it fair to say, Bledge, that if you're revetting bunkers and you're doing it often, I imagine a really big part of your job as a links manager, especially somewhere like this, is really resource allocation. Like, you have X number of working hours in a week across your team, and you've got to apportion them out as you see for maximum return. And I talked about greens getting smaller. Well, bunkers often get smaller and get rounder in shape, and deeper as well. And I look at so many different golf courses where that has proven to be the case, and I imagine that it's going to be quicker to reverse a bunker that's one half the size, because it's not just if it's half the diameter. You think back to maths in school, it's not half the circumference, it's much less than that, and also the depth of the less sand blow, and those things I think are going to make the teams work slightly easier. But if we can start to recover some of the beautiful shapes, and yes, there's going to be a bit more sand blow, and yes, there's going to be, the bunkers are going to get larger, but it would be interesting to see how that changes the character of the golf course again.
Well, if you're not having staff every year revetting 20 bunkers, then you've got that labour to put on elsewhere. I'm losing 6 guys a day.
Yeah.
So that's 6 times 8 hours a day to doing that. So you think what else you could be doing? You could be hand cutting greens every morning. You could be hand cutting tees twice. Even when there's not as much growth, just for that polished look. I could really be presenting a course at this time of year that is up there with Queenwood and Wisley for presentation. But this is exceptional circumstances with the Open coming next year. I'm guessing we'd probably do about 15, 20 a year, which we'd have had done by now. So I'm actually looking forward to, after the Open, to seeing what kind of golf course I can produce for the members and visitors after that, because it's such a drain on labour. But revetted bunkers are beautiful and they really suit Hoylake.
Oh, it's perfect.
If you're changing Wallasey to rough edge, I would fully be behind that, because I've seen, we did a lot of rough edge bunkers at Deal. Year one, they look all right, not bad. They take 2-3 years to bed in. Some of our bunkers down the road now are 4 or 5 years old, and they just look incredible. And the same as the Prince's bunkers.
Yeah, a friend of mine, I was at St Patrick's in at Rosapenna, and I was lucky enough to get an invite to join a really, really good friend of mine at the Renaissance Cup, which was really, really interesting experience. But I met up with a friend of mine there who is a shaper for Corkrenshaw, and Ben Warren, he built the tree farm with Kai Golby for Zach Blair. And Ben described them better than anyone else I've ever heard. He said, we're looking for a state of suspended decay.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought suspended decay, what a great term to describe those natural looking bunkers. It looks like the wind and the rain and the animals who are taking shelter from it are like just burrowing, and it grows, and it is land that is falling away as it does on the other side of on the dunes on the other side of the golf course. Where the wind is eroding them. It's how you capture the beauty of that in a practical way, and the suspended aspect of it. So it's not just, they can't just keep moving all over the place. They're going to collapse a bit in places and change, but in a controlled way. So
it's finding, for me as the greenkeeper, finding that balance between the rugged, natural, falling away look and something that still looks tidy,
yes,
which is very difficult to do. I.e., I don't like when weeds start to grow in sand scrapes, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people would maybe just leave them and let that. I mean, your ecologist would really promote just let the weeds come in, because the weeds are supposed to grow in dunes and dune slacks and sand scrapes. But when you're still trying to present a top 100 golf course, these are the things that you can't really compromise on, I feel. But it's it's horses for courses. A lot of people would blast me for that, because they believe it should be more super rugged, but I don't think it suits like this, for example. But let's merge the questions now then, and go back to the links from the road.
Yeah.
Was there a golf course on there that you were like, God, I'd love to get my paws on this? Put you on the spot here.
Yeah, you really have.
From an architectural point of view, if you were like, when I'm lying in bed at night trying to get to sleep, sometimes I'll think about stuff like that. I'll always think Dumfries and Galloway Golf Club. How would I do that up? What would I do to the holes to make it, if money wasn't an object? So, what's your one of those?
I mean, I'm going to steer away from some of the big clubs and some of the very local courses, and say, I'll tell you where I'd really like to work would be Fraserburgh.
All right, yes.
Have you been up there?
I've never been to Fraserburgh, no, but I know where you are.
Like, it's one of the oldest golf clubs in the world, and I think they almost ran out of money a few years ago. But the land is just brilliant. It's and different types of land as well. It's Corby Hill, they call it the main course, and it's sort of, there is a section on the hill, and then you go to the far end, and it has it sort of plays over they're almost like chocolate drops. They're not, because they're more rounded dunes, but it's like it's almost like in this enormous field of these are completely natural dune droplet things, and they're really cool. And then you come back and play through the big valleys, and it's like you're on the front nine at Royal Aberdeen or somewhere like that, and it's super cool, and it's just natural and authentic. And there are so many places like that. Machrihanish. I mean, Machrihanish is just out of this world June wise, and it's so natural. So yeah, I'd say somewhere like that, where it's authentic, natural stuff, where you can really have some fun in the dunes. And yeah, it doesn't matter if someone thinks that what you've done is a bit mad, because it's played for pure enjoyment. Because you're always going to have to, like we say about the bunkers there, you're always going to, I think, have to moderate and draw a line and a balance and things, because golf courses are played by so many different types of people, but somewhere where it's why I think the course at St Patrick's, I think Doak's done such a ridiculously good job, and Eric Iverson and Clyde Johnson and Angela Moser, it's just out of this world good, but there will be people who go to that golf course and hate it. But I think my colleague Mike Clayton would say, well, that's when you're onto something good, because any art should be, not everyone should like it, not everyone should get it, because we're all different. So if we all like it, then it's never going to be pushing the boundary and be as good as it could be for the people who do like that kind of thing.
Well, your head must be absolutely bursting with information and pictures and ideas, because you've seen so much because of all these wonderful golf courses that you visited in the last couple of years. So it's going to be an exciting career to follow. Could we tell the listeners about your Instagram page, whatever, they can have a look at some of your photos, and can we maybe discuss anything you're going to do afterwards with the book? Or
I'm Links from the Road on Instagram, SD _Cooper on Twitter, and I've put out so little. I said this in the Instagram live thing I did the other day. I've got so much stuff. It is just.
Well, you send me quite a lot of pervy photos of bunkers a lot of the time.
Yeah, well,
which
I'm glad you said bunkers then. No, I've got so much stuff and video that I need to do, but yeah, I'm going to write up the tour in a book and do it properly, because it will give me a chance to relive it again, and I will start to do a few more films. I've done a few.
Your films have been excellent. I really enjoyed the Royals. Before I came up here, obviously, watched quite a few of them. I mean, you did a great one at Royal St Port's, good one in Royal St George's.
Yeah, and I did one on
Hailing. Yes, shout out Greg Easton.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, Tom Simpson building a links course.
We need more videos. More videos is what we need, I think.
Yeah, I've got loads that I need to do. So I'm thinking of doing a little series, but I need to work out how to infill. I'll work on that. But I think I've got so much stuff that.
But in the meantime, plugging away, drawing, visiting, golfing, podcasting.
That's right.
Is that the plan?
Yeah, I think I'm
hitting the gym.
I'm not going anywhere. I just want to hibernate, mate. I mean, it's been so much fun going on the tour and going to all these places, but it's so time consuming. And because we've done it over a relatively short period of time, I'm just looking forward now that, the nights are getting shorter and it's darker and it's colder. And I'm sure to a lot of people, that sounds awful, but to me, I'm actually looking forward to just cracking on writing, podcasting, working on my films, and importantly, working on the course plans of the places we are working, and hopefully a few more as well on the way. So
we're coming into Christmas now. It's not getting golfing weather, is it? So you're right. We should hibernate in the Black Toad in Hoylake with Flight Lieutenant Luke Hopper.
The Black Toad.
The Black Toad.
Yeah,
I think that's where we should go. But yeah, thank you. This has been very enlightening tonight, and it's been great to return the favour for having me on first.
Thanks, mate.
And we'll be checking in with Sam in future podcasts to come. So as a final word, Sam, is there any future guests that we're looking to get on? Have you anyone you've been thinking about?
Oh, yeah. Well, on Friday, we're getting we've got a big day, haven't we?
Yes.
So we're going to play and record with. Do you think Ryan's the biggest golf badger that you've met?
He's outrageous. He is. Any time Ryan phones us, I need to put an hour aside.
Yeah.
There's two people in this world that love a right good chat: Ryan and Mike Sawicki from Birkdale. They're absolutely fantastic pair of them, and Ryan is a massive golf badger, and he's got a really interesting story. And I've got something that I want to share with him as well.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that.
So that's going to be the episode after this. Ryan knows. So Ryan owns the Addington, and if you haven't heard of the Addington, I don't know what you've been doing, because we're working on it. So go and have a look on social media, and like the story of that golf course is insane, and we'll talk about it next week. So
Excellent.
very much looking forward to Ryan, and yeah, I think we've got a few good people up our sleeve as well.
Cool. So thanks for everyone for tuning in, and that'll be us signing off from the boot room. Yeah. It's time for a beer and some dinner. Catch y'all later.